The Jiggy. First and foremost, it's the main collectible of the series Banjo Kazooie. That's the most surface level observation of it. But among the games in the series, we get bits of lore underneath it all. And some sort of Jiggy religion. Sometimes we get bits about it directly, and other times we have to seek it out. Let's navigate into the info for Jiggies and all related lore and see what we can find. Taking this game by game, we first establish every bit of information we can find in the OG Banjo Kazooie on Nintendo 64. The manual states that the jigsaw pieces, later established as Jiggies, are the most important item of all, as they open the doorways from Gruntilda's lair into further game worlds. They do so by placing them into the jigsaw puzzles. Each jigsaw is missing at least one piece, and once placed and completing the image, it will open the doorway to a level. There's also a large Jiggy that, when stepped on, allows you to insert the Jiggies into the puzzle. Interesting enough, like all items, it's alive when we first collect it. Though, aside from a bit of dialogue, we don't really see any other sentience. In the dialogue box, there are eyes, and in the actual game, there aren't. That's essentially all of the info we get in the first game in the series. A main collectible, used to unlock worlds, it's never really established if these are in fact magical in this title. They just fill into puzzles. It almost seems like it could be a lock mechanism as well. Though after you put them in the puzzle, it does seem like there's some sort of magical spell being broken. Before we move into Tooie, I think we should look at the GBA entries to see what they say, as Grunty's revenge takes place in between Kazooie and Tooie. Now let's enter into Banjo Grunty's revenge. Here on the Banjo timeline, we now have Master Jiggywiggy and his Jiggy Temple. A quick look at the manual establishes that Jiggies are in fact magical items. After collecting your first one, Jiggywiggy talks to you and says you have just collected your first Jiggy. Jiggies are powerful objects containing magic strong enough to break the spell of the Great Witch Gruntilda. Gruntilda has scattered our Jiggies far and wide across many lands. The spell that she cast on us Jiggy priests prevents us from touching any Jiggies, so we are powerless to stop her. The Jiggy that you've collected has enough power to open the way to Cliff Farm. I will open the gateway to the altar for you. Please carry this Jiggy to the Jiggy pad and press A to release the Jiggy magic. So, Jiggywiggy implies that there are more Jiggy priests out there in the world, and that they are equally cursed and cannot touch Jiggies, which are imbued with magical power that can break the spell and magic of Gruntilda. It is again used to open magical barriers and unlock worlds. This is also the first canonical time we encounter the Crystal Jiggy, though he refers to it as an altar. The imagery in the temple is also interesting. Lots of Jiggy imagery for sure, but it's curious as to why there are statues of Jiggywiggy himself, as if he was a deity and worthy of worship in the Banjo and Rare universe. It's also worth pointing out that we are in the past roughly 20 years in this game, and Jiggywiggy is largely the same as he is in later titles. And in fact, though we don't see Gruntilda, Mumbo looks largely the same. It's not impossible that they just aged 20 years, and it's not as significant as something like 64 years or anything. But could this sort of imply magic users don't age like the rest of us? How old could these folks actually be? That's about it for the lore in Grunty's Revenge, so now the question is if there is any sort of information we get from Banjo Pilot, the other GBA title. And no, not really. Jiggywiggy makes a brief cameo appearance, but the Jiggies are just for collecting and unlocking a race. On to Banjo Tooie. This is where it gets really interesting. While this game did establish Jiggywiggy, in the timeline he first appears in Grunty's Revenge, like I mentioned. The Jiggy Temple is located in Wooded Hollow just past the Jinjo village on the Isle o' Hags. It's a large structure and is being gatekept by a disciple of Jiggywiggy, our first instance of a Jiggy-like person or priest aside from Jiggywiggy. The temple itself is made of large stones shaped like Jiggies with a giant Jiggy opening at the top. The opening allows the tremendous power of the Crystal Jiggy to shoot out and change the world. There's also a golden jigsaw puzzle which can seem to form a picture of a world, and that world can be unlocked by the Crystal Jiggy. Note that in the original game we had puzzles that were missing pieces, but in this one we're not only adding them, but also building some of them up completely. The levels unlocking are a lot flashier than in Kazooie, but keep in mind we are also dealing with 3 witches this time, rather than 1. All the games do state that Gruntilda's magic is blocking all these worlds and the Jiggies unlock them, so there's no theory or lore pointing out to these worlds being dangerous and sealed off by Jiggywiggy or anything like that. Aside from observations when you complete a puzzle and have the correct amount of Jiggies, Jiggywiggy actually says something very interesting. First off, Banjo's the chosen one, and second, he states, "Behold the power of the mighty Jiggywiggy," implying it's his power, not the Jiggies. In Grunty's Revenge, he says the Jiggies have the power. Here, it sounds like he does. At least, he is the one to utilize the Crystal Jiggy, which is confirmed in the manual. The Crystal Jiggy harnesses the power. However, the most interesting piece of info comes from his disciple, who tells us we must collect images in the form of Jiggywiggy himself. Images? Crafted after him? He does lay out these particular puzzles as his challenges to test if we're worthy. Maybe he doesn't need the Jiggies at all, or maybe his power has been broken up? Grunty's Revenge indicates they have power needed for the Crystal Jiggy, and Gruntilda scattered them across the worlds. There are Jiggy World posts as well, with particular Jiggy language on them at the entrance of every world. One easy to miss detail is while in the first game Banjo grabs the Jiggies and Kazooie puts them in his backpack, in Tooie they magically fly around you and enter your backpack themselves. Before I really get into speculation and theorizing, I want to look at one more game in the series. I'm not really counting spin-offs so much. I know Banjo was in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, and his special move is Jiggy Rain, but we don't need to count that. Also Smash Bros, but we don't get anything from that other than maybe Jiggies are in DK Country too, which, it's all connected. Go watch my video on the Rare Universe. Let's look briefly at Nuts and Bolts, the black sheep of the family, and see what we can find. Master Jiggywiggy is actually not present in this title. The game centers around Log, or the Lord of Games. Jiggies are acquired from completing challenges and then dispensed via a giant vending machine, and then you have to go drop them off. Once they're acquired, they unlock levels as usual. These Jiggies, though, are different. Even their appearance is much larger. What Banjo used to be able to fit into his backpack now must be carried by a large trolley. These Jiggies are not really breaking any spells with magic or anything, but just act as a measuring tool by Log for your progress as stated in the manual. We don't see any Jiggy priests or people, and the only mention of Jiggywiggy is from Jolly Dodger as one Jiggy you can purchase, but they all have silly names and they all are just basic Jiggies. This game also seems to take place in either a different part of the world or a different dimension entirely. But interesting that even though there are no Jiggy temples or priests, we still see Jiggies as the main collectible and goal. And that's about it for that game. Let's just recap for a minute everything we learned about the Jiggies in these games. Jiggies are at least sometimes sentient. Jiggies are magic. They are the image of Jiggywiggy. There are Jiggy priests and temples. The Crystal Jiggy seems to be where the power comes from, though only Master Jiggywiggy seems to be able to use it. They can override magical spells and barriers. Jigsaw puzzles are either locks with the Jiggies being the key, or to test you. It appears either there are variations in Jiggies or they can change sizes. There are Jiggy signs at world entrances indicating Jiggy priests have been there, and Jiggies have been scattered around by Grunty. So now armed with what we have, let's explore the cult, its members, beliefs, and what their goal is. Here are a few initial assumptions based on all the info I gathered about the structure of the cult. Master Jiggywiggy is regarded as a Jiggy deity. He is depicted in statues and has many disciples under him, though we only see one. The Jiggies are said to be in his image. The Crystal Jiggy is either what gives Jiggywiggy his power, or it is channeled from him to it. The Jiggies function as some sort of magical batteries that charge it up. The Jiggies that are scattered throughout the world each have a little bit of magic. His followers have sought them out, but cannot acquire them due to the curse from Grunty, so they identify worlds with stones and their language for those attempting the trials to finding them. Back to Jiggywiggy himself, it is possible he was a normal person originally, just like we see some people in the Banjo series, perhaps one who could utilize magic. There are 3 ways to go about why his face looks like a Jiggy. 1. The interaction with the Crystal Jiggy and its power morphs whoever is utilizing it into a Jiggy, which is why Jiggywiggy and only those who have become his true disciples who show dedication are marked this way. Sort of like the finger thing in Assassin's Creed. 2. In the same way Grunty's curse transformed Mumbo's face into a skull, could it have transformed Jiggywiggy and the priests? He did say they were all cursed by her. Or 3. He is a deity and his likeness is reflected in the Crystal Jiggy and other Jiggies. I'm leaning more toward him being this way naturally because they never state the curse changed their appearance, but only made it so they can't touch Jiggies, and he seems to be regarded as a deity. Why would they seemingly worship him if the power comes from the crystal? The face modification is a way to test true faith, which is another reason why I lean toward it. Those who follow Jiggywiggy and undergo the process are also cursed, so even if someone just became a priest, the curse from Grunty would still apply. Since the curse affects Jiggywiggy and his power, anyone touched by his power is subject to the curse. The reason why Banjo is stated to be the chosen one is because he's the only one who braves everything to collect Jiggies. He is the world's only real Jiggy collector, with the exception of Gruntilda, who really just runs over anyone who dares to defy her. Except Banjo, who gives her the old 1-2 buckle my shoe. She can't seem to best him and Kazooie. Now, why do Jiggy priests follow Jiggywiggy? What do they actually believe? What is the purpose of it all? That's a loaded question, but I think for Jiggywiggy, it's as simple as seeing the power he has and his use of the Crystal Jiggy. How it can overcome even Gruntilda's magic, which evidently is very powerful. Aside from the curse thing, consider how Mumbo was her teacher, and yet she cursed him, and he can't seem to reverse it. She seems to be regarded in this world as one of the most powerful magic users. Her affinity for technology also gives her an edge. Not many in this land oppose Gruntilda if we're honest. She comes in and builds an empire, polluting the world and causing problems with her minions everywhere. And anyone who fights back suffers. The line about the Jiggies being Jiggywiggy's image may have just been because they look like him and not crafted at all, but perhaps these are magic bits broken off the whole, or pieces imbued with his magic from the crystal, and the crystal can absorb and utilize their power to get back to full strength. He's weakened since the Jiggies are gone. The more Jiggies acquire, the more power he has to channel into the crystal. Maybe in combining some of the game knowledge we learned from Kazooie and Tooie, the Jigsaws also have limitation. They unlock worlds, but once the Jiggies create a full picture, they cannot be removed. So you need Jiggies to restore the power to the Crystal Jiggy, otherwise it just sits there. They could either be crafted in ancient or a sort of naturally occurring magical object. Perhaps Jiggywiggy's power getting passed onto something turns it into a Jiggy, which is how a disciple's head turns into a Jiggy, and maybe Jiggies themselves are created. They start as other objects or beings. So many things are sentient, and some aren't. Could something like a honeycomb be imbued with Jiggywiggy's power and become a Jiggy? It seems possible. So what is the goal of this cult? The priests probably see it as a great honor to be transformed into magical Jiggies, as they can oppose the dark magic of the world. They attempt to let the world know and spread the gospel of Jiggywiggy, looking for others who would join the cause. They must get rid of Gruntilda and assist Banjo in collecting all the Jiggies to counter her magic. The signposts are in fact actually them marking places they've been and attempting to help those who would collect Jiggies by stating there are Jiggies found in this world. I'm gonna summarize the Jiggy cult like this. The cult wants everyone to become like Jiggywiggy, who they see as a god, and be imbued with a bit of his power and transform into a Jiggy, a great honor, pure magic that can counter evil. They wander around spreading the gospel of Jiggy and searching for pieces. They leave signposts where they've been so others can collect them as they themselves can't touch them. They butter up Banjo by calling him the chosen one, and he brings Jiggies back and their magic goes back to Jiggywiggy. But really, it could be anyone who did that, aside from them. Their ultimate goal is to have many people get Jiggified and be ruled over by Jiggywiggy, the leader, who has spent the most time with and utilizes the Crystal Jiggy. His ultimate goal is to expand his empire, stop the use of dark magic, and the pollution of this world. Jiggywiggy is in fact a deity, or at least a powerful entity who has been weakened by dishing out bits of his power into items and people around the world. The cult of the Jiggy strives to restore Jiggywiggy to his full power, and the god of Jiggies shall rule the world peacefully, once again, slowly jigifying everything in the process. This is the purpose of all the Jiggies and the goal of the cult of the Jiggy. Or am I overthinking it? Well, that's all I have for you. Be sure to drop a like in this video and subscribe so you don't miss a future upload. Until next time, have a good one.